A report from an independent congressional watchdog released on Thursday led with a very disturbing statistic: $1.4 billion worth of coronavirus stimulus checks authorized by Congress's relief bill, the CARES Act, and sent out by the federal government went to more than 1 million dead Americans.
News reports flowed after the release of the report, and online commentators were aghast. How could the Treasury Department blow so much of the taxpayers' money on dead people? What a flagrant example of bureaucratic failure and government waste.
But I am here to tell you that not only is that $1.4 billion in payments actually not a problem, it's actually pretty good. Heck, if there's a problem here, it's because that amount of overpayment was too low.
But Bob, you may be exclaiming, look at all the waste, the government shall surely go bankrupt blowing money like this. How sloppy, how corrupt.
First off, calm down, no need for all the exclamation points. Second, let me explain why this is not a big deal.
Given the realities of how federal government finances operate and the size of the pandemic economic crunch, the fact that we've only given out $267 billion, and wasted $1.4 billion of that on dead people, is actually more of a problem because it's too little.
For one thing, the small percentage that accidentally went out means that the requirements to get the checks were probably too onerous, if anything, as Bloomberg's Joe Weisenthal pointed out. To that point, a new report from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, based on Census Bureau data, estimated that as many as 12 million Americans may never receive a stimulus check because of clerical difficulties, unless states work extra hard to get those checks to people.
I don't know about you, but it seems like a bigger deal that 12 million Americans who need help may not get it than a fraction of that number of dead people got checks.
In fact, it's clear that we need to send more checks out now, even if they flow to these same dead people.
Millions of Americans are out of work, millions of families are worrying about where their next meal is going to come from, and millions of Americans are worried about making the next payment on the roof over their head. These are the actual crises about which we should demand the government do something.
Some economists and politicians have suggested that stimulus checks should be dispersed regularly until we get clear signs that the economy is recovering. This would prevent political fights like we're seeing now, where one good jobs report is causing Congress to curtail expectations for another round of stimulus despite the fact that the unemployment rate is still higher than at any point since the Great Depression and coronavirus cases are still soaring in many states.
But this idea that we are supposed to be aghast at some slight technical error that led to a relatively minor payment to dead people in the process of trying to save the U.S. economy from a devastating collapse reveals a long-held, broken mindset that has been conditioned into the American public.
We should be inclined towards generosity in this moment, as my colleague Lynette Lopez wrote in a column a couple of months ago. Instead of pointing fingers at each other, living and dead, who got too much, we should be pointing the finger at the government for doing too little.
The human and economic toll of this pandemic due to a too cautious federal response is far more of a scandal, far more of a failure than these extra checks.